Hello, I'm Tara Ruckman.
And I'm Stephanie Howe, and we are Control the Chaos EDU. Are you burnout? Are you feeling frustrated or overwhelmed?
Or maybe it's the opposite and you're a go getter and want to level up. Then it's time to dive in with real talk and solution focused conversations.
Hello, and welcome to today's Control the Chaos conversation. We're going to be talking about no tech, which is probably crazy for you to think because I'm a technology coach, right? And you're like, that's in your title. But we're actually going to be talking about no tech and having no problems with it because sometimes our students get too much tech. And so I think when we're able to change it up a little bit, where they're doing some hands on activities or they're using markers, it can be a great way for students to actually learn and to collaborate with others. I think sometimes when we have those screens up, we sometimes find ourselves not collaborating as much or following along. So, when I think about no tech, I kind of go back to when I was teaching, and there were days, one year when we first went one to one, we were using a lot of tech, me and my co teacher. And our students just, again, they had so much technology that we decided to spend an entire day with no technology. And we saw kind of students react a little bit different. And I think for us, because we were using so much technology, it was a reminder that we can't get rid of the paper. And so we're going to, again, go over some strategies and ideas when it comes to no technology.
Yeah, and this also goes back to like we were at this conference, um, and it was a virtual conference in Australia, and it was wonderful, by the way. So one of the questions from a person that was attending the conference was, we're actually a low tech district all around. We don't have very much tech within the district. So they kept asking for options of, well, can you do that without tech? So that was another reason why that we started talking about this episode, no tech, no problem, because we're like, a lot of the things that we do revolve around technology, like behavior ed tech, right? We are tracking behaviors through tech. We are not using paper. We are using different things for our classroom management. So, with all of that in mind, between our kids sometimes needing manipulatives or in the collaboration, we also have districts that are low tech. That we would like to, make sure that we're reaching those people as well.
So the first activity is you've seen roadmaps digital, but you can actually print those. So even though you make it on a Google slide, just go ahead and print a copy. And what your students, I think, will find is they will like crossing out um, the roadmap that they're working on. So again, taking those activities, still using that roadmap concept of you're going to do this first, then you're going to do this, then you're going to do this, but actually having your students be able to cross out. And I did this during summer school. I took my roadmap and I actually got a clip art with smiley faces on it. And I had kids in second grade all the way to sixth grade or going into seventh grade. And they had these little smiley faces on them and they had to use marker and they had to color them in as they were finished. And it didn't matter what grade those kids were in. They were so excited to color in their little smiley face with the markers. And they got that kind of satisfaction of, okay, I did this task. And they just had a lot of fun with it. So, again, printing them out and then having your students actually mark off as they do them. And they can, again, be different paper activities. And we're going to walk through some of those paper activities that you can do right now.
All right. So, also project design. When we are getting into that project design, just printing out like the graphic organizers, the planning forms. So, as the students are sitting, if this is a group design, of course, as the students are sitting in their groups, you could have a note taker, you can have, where you could have them pass the paper around like discussion diamonds where one person writes, they have a minute to jot down their thoughts, they send it to the next person, jot down their thoughts, and they keep going around the circle. So each person has a minute to brain dump as they're project planning their thoughts and ideas for their project. So discussion diamonds can be used with anything, but particularly you could use that paper design of discussion diamonds to help project planning or help brainstorming for a project. So those are just a few ideas, and just mapping out their projects throughout the whole planning process, down to we do a FedEx day, and they're actually drawing a model of their project. So it's a really important part of project design that you could do all on paper, or of course you could bring it back to tech, but that is a great way to get students to collaborate, and then each person passing as they go to start planning for the project.
Yeah, and again, when you're able to get your students to just sketch out what they're kind of thinking, that can add a lot of value into their learning and make some connections in their brains. When they're taking notes or when they're watching a video, have them sketch out what they're learning as they're doing those different things too. That can be a huge benefit. One of my favorite activities that I used to do all the time when I taught, my kids love them, is called paper slides. And with paper slides, it is kind of like a Google slide, except you just use a blank sheet of paper. And so what happens is you just give out blank pieces of paper. And when you give out those pieces of paper, your students will be in groups of about 3 to 4 per group. And you're going to give them some type of concept. And so when you give them a concept, that is their focus for their presentation, just like you would with a Google slide. And what I tell the kids is every paper, every slide has to have a different concept or a different like theme for that actual page of paper. And they will create kind of their title on there. They might add bullet points, they might add drawings, visuals, but they're not able to use technology. So students, again, have to use markers, colored pencils, crowns, whatever they have, and they have to create their paper slides. And what students typically do is first they will brainstorm out what each slide is going to cover. So for example, I did this with math. And so we were doing adding fractions with uncommon denominators. So what the kids had to do is they had to take that and they had to create each step on a different slide is what some groups did. Some groups created a word problem and explained how to solve that word problem within the paper slides. And so we had anywhere between 5 different papers to 10 different papers explaining each of those different steps of changing that denominator. And so students, again, they walk through, they created those paper slides. And then what they did is they came up in front of the class and they showed those slides. So when they take those paper slides, they like crumple them up as their transitions. So they kind of add some like fun transitions. Some of them slide them really fast. But then they present their slides to the class. And again, it's just a great way to get students thinking outside the box, and they're collaborating with each other and they're creating. So again, I usually do this with about 3 to 4 students per group. That way they can divide and conquer. So 2 of them can work on like the same different slides. And then they put it together and create their paper slides. You can do this with vocabulary. You could do this with word problems, step-by-step math concepts, really anything that you might try to create where you might use like a Google slide, you can use with a paper slide, and grab those markers because the kids are going to love it.
Also drawing notes. So this is like going back old school, right? Like once upon a time, we used to have to sit in class and we have to take a bunch of notes. And then we started giving out some guided notes. And then sometimes we actually just give the notes, and because we want the students to monotask, right? We want them to just listen, not listen and write down notes. So this kind of goes back old school. This is a little bit more of a multitask, but you're listening and drawing your notes. So this is, and I know you can't see this, but if you practice and you like teach kids how to concept form, or just taking notes in a different way, adding highlighters and fun types of font and drawing arrows and drawing pictures, help them create that concept within their mind because they're drawing it. I know, Steph, you have a friend that does those Google drawings, right? And that's all about, when you're taking notes, finding ways to remember what those notes are that you're taking, fun ways, whether it's smiley faces, whether I drew a picture of a tree and on my branches I have multiple different notes, or I have emojis. One of the things that I like to do is draw some emojis on different things that I'm trying to remember as I'm taking notes. So if you have note takers in your class, move away from maybe taking some notes on that tech piece or filling in notes on the tech piece, but going back to every once in a while that good old fashioned paper pencil and allowing them to doodle their notes, because that doodling sometimes will help trigger that comprehension within some of that note taking. Also, muscle memory is a way, as you're practicing and you're using your hands to air draw things or air write things. So simple, but that muscle memory, as you're practicing writing for our younger kids, they're writing the letter in the air before they're writing it on the paper. And then they're also seeing it on text. So that's 3 ways to do it, because you have your tech, you have your paper, and then you have your air write and your muscle memory. So there's multiple ways then to incorporate some of those non ways to boost that comprehension level as well. And that could be with anything. It does not have to be a student that is learning to write. I can air write something in my mind, whether it's a sentence, whether it's a review question that I have kids air write a Y or a N for yes or no, or a T or an F for true or false. As we're answering questions, it's also a silent game. We do like stand up, sit down. So that's a no tech type of review game, but it could be as simple as air writing that, and you're getting some of that practice in your mind, which brings us to review games.
Yeah, review games are a great way to add some excitement into your classroom. So typically I tell teachers, if you have task cards or just questions, also with ChatGPT this weekend, I was playing with it with creating just questions. So you can type your topic into ChatGPT and it will create questions, and you don't need to do that. So that can also save you some time. So when you have these questions, you're going to then add them to some games. So with spoons, this is kind of a great way to review vocabulary. I don't know if you've played the card game Spoons, where you have to get the same 4 numbers across, and then you grab a spoon, and then people have to watch and grab that spoon as well. But it's similar to that. But what you would do is you would write the vocabulary word. You might provide an example. You might have a synonym, and you might use the word in like a sentence or something like that. And then the students have to get all 4 of those cards. And when they have all 4, they grab a spoon. And then again, they would watch each other and they would grab them. And then they keep playing until they get down to the winner. So that could be a great way to just kind of, again, use low tech, where your students just have some paper and the different vocabulary words. I've seen it with fractions being used when it comes to math. And it can just be a great way for students to quickly maybe do their math facts or something like that. And then they grab a spoon and they're just practicing those skills. Pictionary, we talked about drawing, but again, getting students to maybe draw out a concept that they're learning, and then the students have to guess that vocabulary word or a process that they're kind of going over. So maybe it's like the water water. Oh my gosh, the water cycle, and they have to explain a certain part of it, and then they have to guess what it is. Taboo, where they can't say certain words on the card, and they might have to just use other words outside of those. So again, using some critical thinking as well during these games. Trash get ball is another good one where you ask them questions and then they get to shoot in the trash can with just like a scrap of paper, and then you can keep score of which team wins. Tic-tac-booyah, you put this huge tic-tac-toe board up there, and what your students have to do is they have to answer questions. And then once they answer those questions, they typically work with a team as well. And then they get to put their little X somewhere on this like grid. So it's like this huge grid of different squares. And again, the students will put their little initials or an X or different colors in these squares, and then they have to get 4 in a row. So their goal is to get 4 in a row, but they also need to block other teams and stuff like that. So that can be another great way to review content that is kind of competitive against teams.
Oh, I love Trasketball. It's one of you can play that with anything too. I mean, I love the paper football game, putting up, like, just because it's Super Bowl, putting up a paper football in your classroom, anywhere in your classroom, on your board, on your wall, on your floor, it doesn't matter. But you put up a paper football and you cut out a couple of footballs, and the kids have to move the footballs along as they answer the questions for team games. So that's a great fun one. Or again, we have that for tech, where you put up the slide and they have to move their football along as they answer questions, but you do it paper as well. So many good paper games. Going back to the old days, we use many new tech things all the time, but everything that we do, we could somehow, well, not everything, we can't Google, we can't chat GBT. Did I say that right? I haven't even used it yet. Everything that we do can absolutely 100% be modified in some way, shape, or form to no tech, no problem. So if you have a low tech district, if you are just in the mood to get kids interactive with each other with no tech and go all paper pencil, go a little old school, bring back the old days, mix it up, because we all know that we still need to have those skills without tech as well, just to create that balance in the classroom for whatever your reason is. No tech, no problem. Low tech, no problem. Make it happen. If you have a question on any of our resources and you need to modify them to paper, pencil, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And for today, like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review as your call to action, or share an idea that you took from a high tech to a low tech. And until next time, control the chaos.
Thanks for listening to Control the Chaos EDU. Check out the description for show notes.
We look forward to connecting with you on social media. Subscribe to the weekly podcast so you never miss an episode. Control the chaos. Until next time.